Thank you, everyone, for your patience in fixing that. We can resume our meeting today now. Hearing, again, I'll just repeat, hearing case 2013-0214 Kingman Road. So we'll continue. Any more questions from the board? Down to my left.
I have one more question. The area across the South Orange Avenue, that is Tuxedo Park, correct?
Yes.
I thought it was part of the Montrose District.
I'm sorry?
Directly across South Orange Avenue?
From this property, it is Tuxedo Park, correct?
I thought it was Montrose District.
It's
I
Tuxedo
thought-
Park.
It is Tuxedo.
Okay,
Okay.
and do any of the other Tuxedo Park properties face the street in terms of this access?
Yes.
Yes.
They do?
I recall.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Like on, I think Stanley Road or something. Tuxedo
Some of the
Park.
houses, I think, face it. I don't know if any of the curb cuts are on South Orange Avenue. There is one?
There is that one that's, has a circular driveway right in front.
You got to talk into the microphone.
There is one that has a circular driveway in front. I think that's, it would be here. I'm not sure. It might be one block down. It's very large lot, but I'm almost certain that it has a driveway that is circular to the front.
But there are very few curb cuts on South Orange Avenue.
Okay.
For obvious reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to me that both of the streets that have those gates up is sort of some sort of an attempt to sort of shield that neighborhood from that street. So, at least from access. So, the proposal to introduce an element that really welcomes up the street is, it might be a good idea, but it's definitely different than what the current situation is basically trying to do. Because, I guess that neighborhood, those properties, they had the option to have some sort of a nice gateway that you will find in other parts of South Orange, but those streets don't. It's a closed off gate. So I'm just struggling with how opening up access, both physically in terms of a individual driveway, and then sort of visually and aesthetically as sort of this welcome to Montrose Park. I'm having difficulty with that as a sort of a design element.
Okay.
Well, in fact, the Historic District has banners hanging that welcome you to the district. So there is indication, and also the street signs are a different color.
On South Orange?
Throughout all of Montrose Park, the
Okay, 'cause-
burgundy street signs indicate the Historic District, whereas the rest of the town signs are green, so.
Oh, okay, because when I came up South Orange, the only banners I saw was Seton Hall banners,
Some of
on-
those may have been replaced.
along, the property that we're talking about. And as far as as I mentioned before, there are driveways and frontages, it's like at one end, and then this proposed property would be at the other end, and while it's gated in the middle to prevent, people coming in or driving in and out.
Right.
I personally don't, see a problem.
I don't necessarily know if it's a problem or not. It's just different, at least, than the immediate surrounding areas.
Right, well, and those gates, Mr. Barnett, were added in order to prevent cut-through traffic. There was a great deal of traffic that was going through the Historic District, so it was a traffic flow device.
Well, one other issue that question is the way they're setting this, the setbacks are and everything work right now, if you come in off of South Orange Avenue and you maximized your yard allowances or minimized your yard allowances, and you built full size like that, you would have to park a car in front of the house.
Well, again, that goes to the design of the house. It's quite possible the garage would be built into the house. We don't have that information. I don't have that information currently. I think the goal would be to have a garage as opposed to parking either on site or certainly not on the street, but parking, on the property, having an open car on the property versus a garage. So I think that's the intent, is to have a garage.
Yeah, but then would the garage be in the required rear yard and setback, so it's not, so that the
I
parking isn't
can't
right
really,
on the
I
street?
can't address that without,
Because that would be a concern of mine, that we would have basically, you know, possibly 2 or 3 cars parking in the front yard here.
well, you currently have that in that district. Are you saying because it's fronting South Orange, or because on Kingman Road, there were quite a few properties that had cars parked in the driveway? But the intent is for a garage to be built.
I believe garages are required.
I'd like to make a correction. I just looked at Google Maps, and I don't believe there is, that house in Tuxedo Park does front. But there are a couple of houses, I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Ms. Richardson.
Ms. Richardson said, on South Orange Avenue, right up the street, there's 3 houses there.
And are these historic houses that have this?
I don't believe so.
No.
They're in Tuxedo Park?
No, these are in Montrose.
Oh, the ones in Montrose, those are non-contributing houses that were built much later. So they are part of the historic district, but they're considered non-contributing.
And just so I'm clear, in terms of the application for, what is it, not the review board, the Board of Adjustments, in terms of the variances that you would need to do what you're proposing, what are they exactly?
Currently, in our application, the variance would be for the minimum lot with interior. The code requires 140 feet. And on lot 1.02, 80 feet is being proposed. And the second variance is minimum lot width corner on South Orange Avenue. Again, 140 feet are required. And 116.56 feet are being proposed. So those are the 2 variances. That's on your key.
You've been deemed complete by the planning board, right?
Yes,
So the planning board has agreed that those are the only variances that are required?
yes.
There is no curb setback variance. There is no new curb
No,
variance.
without an actual design of the the proposed dwelling, it's kind of hard to make that. Our application's for a minor subdivision at this point.
And this is actually maybe a question for you, in terms of when we do have variance requests, is that part of the municipal land use law? And is there a hardship required or not required?
Well, maybe this is a good time for me to take a step back and talk about the criteria, and because we're all, dealing with this ordinance that's new, and we're all trying to understand what our requirements are and what our role is here. This board does not grant variances.
Correct.
The municipal land use law delegates that responsibility to the planning board. But that doesn't mean that some of the questions that you're asking are inappropriate. Some of the questions that you're asking that are related to the variance may also be related to whether or not it's appropriate under your ordinance to grant them the certificate, okay? One of the challenges I think we have with this application is that we don't have a structure, right? We have a lot that is being subdivided, and the only thing that's in front of us right now is an application to create a new lot that is a little too small, which is why they're going to the planning board for those variances. We have a commitment from the applicant that the footprint will be the same size or smaller than the footprint that's on the plans in front of you. And we have a representation by council that the house will be constructed consistent with the design standards of the township. Right? I think that's pretty much what we know as to those issues. You've all looked before, and I would just remind you again that the criteria that you're supposed to be using in this case are the criteria in section 9A1 and 9A2, I guess, for certificate of appropriateness. And also, if you decided to approve the application, you would then go to section 10C, and 10C says that if a certificate of appropriateness is approved, then we are supposed to provide in our report to the board any other recommendations or factors that we might have with regard to height, massing, density, use, proportion of width and height of the buildings, facades, things of that nature, right? So I think what you've got to decide is whether this application, on the record that you have in front of you, qualifies for a certificate of appropriateness under 9(1)C and all those things that are set forth in there. You could decide that it does not and deny it. You could say that additional information is necessary in order to make that decision, and we could defer it to another hearing. Or you could approve it, and in the context of approving it, you could make recommendations that I just mentioned as under 10C. I think that's where we are.
Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. I wanted to make a statement that in 2003, the village expanded its lot width requirements, and in fact, the RA 75 zone was expanded to 140 feet wide. And the reason the village did this village-wide was in order to help to prevent overdensity in the village. We already are a densely packed community with houses on regular-sized lots, and part of what makes the historic district are the current size lots, and the intent of those original developers, Thomas Kingman and John Gorham Vos, hundreds of years ago. So I think that the village had in mind not just Montrose Park, but the village-wide as well, in terms of determining the minimum lot width.
And in response to that, the lots are significantly in conformance with the Schedule 2 of your district lot, yard, and bulk regulations. And looking at the subdivision, I think, again, this is my opinion, the spatial or the concern about space in larger lots, I think, in some degree are maintained with this particular application.
Well, I would beg to differ, because you're taking the lot that has its expanse, that is part of the nature of the historic district to have these large-sized lots and beautiful yards, and dividing it in half, basically. So you're making two much smaller lots that do not conform to the current zone.
Okay, so,
So I think that would bear in mind the aesthetics, and that points, to the first here, Roman numeral 1, under procedures for review, is does this site have the aesthetics? And I think part of the significance of that site is its aesthetics and the fact that it is the current size.
okay, well, the aesthetics are basically trees that are fronting South Orange Avenue, rather large trees that are fronting South Orange. To me, aesthetics means, visual appeal, visual, how it looks. You're not seeing the applicant's yard from the street, from either Kingman Road or South Orange Avenue. And I think, again, I mentioned earlier that putting a dwelling facing South Orange Avenue in the proposed site, location rather, on the subdivision would have some visual impact, particularly when it conforms to the design of the Montrose district.
Well, the house fronts on Kingman, so that is the streetscape is from that direction.
Right. Mhm.
The commissioner is referring to Section 9A1C1,
Right.
which is the, and maybe just, I would make it just a suggestion that for, if you don't have it in front of you, we ought to try to maybe, bring it with you at each meeting, so you have, this is really what we're, need to use. Just because this is the first time we're doing this, the procedure for review is that you're supposed to consider the following matters, and I'll just summarize them. The one that Commissioner Don is referring to is the properties, in this case, the properties, sites, or districts' historic, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic significance. The second item is the setting, design, arrangement, texture, details, scale, shape, materials, finish, color, streetscape, and related outbuildings, and consider the relationship of those characteristics to the historic, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic significance of the historic property, site, or district. The impact of the proposed change on the historic and architectural significance of the site or district, The extent to which the proposed action would adversely affect the public's view of a historic property, structure, site, or district from a public street or other public property. Archaeological significance, that's not here. The property's current and potential use in terms of permitted uses by the ordinance or the master plan, the importance of the property or the structure, and the extent to which it's, well, that's a demolition, we don't worry about that one. The next doesn't really apply either.
Yeah, 9.
The extent to which the property and its retention in its current condition would attract tourists, students, writers, historians, et cetera. The next section is about demolition. The next section is about also demolition, I believe, and the last two are about relocations.
Right.
So those are the criteria, I think, that we're considering.
And when I began, I tried to address those, to respond to those criteria early on in my presentation.
I mean, with respect to aesthetics, it's difficult, again, without a proposed, which is fair, obviously. But, in a subdivision, we are just talking about things like setback and lot coverage and access, because those are the things that, impact the subdivision.
Well, can we request, or can we recommend that if there are any outbuildings such as a garage, that they be at the rear of the property, away from the front yard? Is that something that we can, as a caveat for our approval?
Yes, I think that the 10C gives you the option to, really gives you the option to say to the planning board, especially in an application like this, where as you said, we don't know what the building's going to look like.
Right, that's the problem,
But, so this would gives you the opportunity to make those kinds of comments. The truth be told, I think that the council would agree, when she goes in front of the planning board, she's really not going to tell them what this house is going to look like either, right? But,
Currently, because we'd like to get approved. It's a
won't
costly
know-
venture
right.
dealing with the village.
I suppose that the planning board, if it was inclined to grant a minor subdivision, could also impose its own conditions on, we don't want to, obviously it has to conform with the design standards, but, perhaps they could make some comments. I would think that in this case, this board, if it was inclined to approve it, or the planning board, would want to make some conditions to say that a house should be built that is in keeping with the character of the homes around it. And that's really where we're going here, right?
Yep. That would-
You don't want a glass house on that location.
Right, it comes down to design standards.
Right.
That was, my question would be, do we have an idea of, Cape Cod, Center Hall,
Well, I have
Colonial,
my
Craftsman?
client provided me a rendering. Again, this is like not cut in stone. I only have 2 copies.
We're going to mark one of them. That's okay. Okay, we're going to mark this as,
just it's,
Sure. It's a
we're
concept.
going to mark it in A1 as a concept plan.
Okay.
Because you're not committed to it.
A1 is a concept.
Right. And that's, just for the record,
Front elevation.
it's a front elevation. Do you know who drew it?
You know, Ms. Turner? Ms. Turner, do you know do you recall who drew this? Everman, where are they located? Everman Architect in Texas.
Okay.
Here, pass it down.
Pass it to the architect.
Pass it to the architect. To go along with the design standards and everything, again, I looked at the elevation. Any idea of roofing or siding or anything at this point?
No.
No?
Is
Okay.
the other
And so
drawing the
that we-
same
we
as this
would-
Yes,
drawing?
it is.
Because there's no widths on this drawing.
No, but they've told you that it's going to
concept.
be within that footprint, so somewhere.
I realize that. Let's do this.
Again, we will be conforming to the design standard and requirements under the redevelopment design standard that's been established by the village as to color, size, materials.
I have a question, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at, again, my perpetual lot coverage questions. The document shows that the existing lot coverage is 15,000 square foot. And there are two new lots. One is going to be 9,000 square feet, and the other proposed is only, I mean,
I think that's wrong.
it is, okay, so
No,
it is-
I think on here, if you look at the plot plan, I think they show it, this one is 1917, lot 1.01 is 19,177. Lot 2 is 13,202.
okay, thank you.
Oh, there's a typo on the graph,
Yeah.
on the chart?
On this one.
Oh,
We believe, if I'm looking at the survey.
But those two don't add up together.
Right,
So
these
if,
two don't add up.
no, those two don't.
These two add up to
If-
the site, to the property site.
So the full property side is what?
32,000 and change.
32,300.
Okay.
This is, I believe these add up to it, those don't add up to it.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out this.
Has everyone had a chance to look at the elevation?
Well, one of my questions is, if I'm looking at this, what you're proposing to do here, this is the front elevation of the house, and if I use the height elevations of what you have on here, which is 32 feet, and I take that and I transpose that across the front of the house, then you're probably, 1, 2, 3. 3 is 30. No, you'll squeeze it, it'll fit, okay. Again, it just goes back to the question of, are we covering a lot of the lot coverage so that you can't bring a vehicle behind the house and have a structure behind the house like a garage?
Sorry, what's your question? Are you asking, can we have or not?
I mean, are they planning on putting, if they're doing a house of this nature, are they planning on putting a garage on the house? There's no garage built
I
into
know,
the
as I said,
facade.
that's just a concept or rendering. It's not a firm architectural drawing or construction drawing. Again, a garage could also be on the interior of the property. It doesn't have to be a freestanding structure.
Well,
And just one thing, and I think this is, I'm just going to say it, and my question is whether or not this is the truth in terms of lot coverage. This lot coverage is for, I believe, RA1. Is that the lot that most of Montrose is? Which,
RA75, I think this is. It's RA75.
what's the?
It's A75.
RA75.
RA75, which is not just Montrose. I believe RA75 covers other areas in South Orange.
Yes, it does.
So that is that is the minimum for this particular zone. Montrose it falls into that, but it's not necessarily the minimum for Montrose. So when we look at lot coverages, it's important to look at this is what the zoning has required, but based on this residential zone across all of South Orange. It's not necessarily the minimum if you looked at averages for Montrose. Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for council here? Because down either side as we look, because I do want to see if there's any public comments or questions too.
Is anybody else presenting?
That's what I was going to, Counsel, do you have any witnesses?
No, I don't have any more.
Okay, so there's no other witnesses. Any other questions from the board? Okay, is there anyone here to comment about this property? I want to open it up to the public. No one? Okay, we've done that. If there's no more questions, there's no public comment, we can go for a vote.
What about discussion?
We'll have
Discussion.
discussion.
Discussion and a motion.
So is there any more discussion for this?
Well, let me ask you a
That's
que-
amongst us.
I have a question,
Sure.
I guess for you.
Okay.
Can we request, before we approve this, that we can see a site plan with the improvements on the property that they're proposing to do, or must we just base this on the land itself?
The ordinance calls for this commission to review subdivision applications.
Mhm.
And subdivision applications don't require a site plan or detailed engineering drawings. I understand that that puts you in a difficult position because you're being asked really to evaluate whether or not the dividing of this lot and putting a house on it has historical consequences without knowing exactly what it is they're putting on the lot.
Right.
I understand that, and that may be an issue with the ordinance. But they're not even going to do detailed engineering drawings before the planning board. They don't have to for a subdivision. One of the issues that we've talked about, informally, I think, with regard to this ordinance, is that the way the ordinance is structured now, you have a right to evaluate this subdivision application, but then when they go to build a building on it, they can come in for a building permit, and you have
They
no
come back
review
in.
whatsoever. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues I think we have to deal with the ordinance. But what's in front of you right now is, no, I think that you're only entitled to see, in terms of plans, you're only entitled to see whatever the planning board has been given.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean, for example, Ms. Donahue, Commissioner Donahue asked the question about the covenants and that sort of thing. There might be additional information that is historically related that you might, want to have or feel you need to have before you can make a decision. But I think in terms of plans, I think this is all you're going to get.
Okay.
So opening up for discussion amongst us here, and what are our thoughts?
Can I ask one more
Sure,
question?
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Other than the building itself having like the same architectural character of the rest of of Montrose, is there anything that this subdivision does, just in terms of the land, that makes it more similar or more appropriate to other plots of land in Montrose?
Well, there were a couple of smaller units or smaller homes along Kingman Road. I can't remember the addresses. But most people, in my opinion, would be seeing it from the South Orange venue. And so right now, you don't see anything. You just see trees. You might see a side of a house. Again, I think it would enhance that district. It would draw people's attention to that district. I think there was a concern about the attraction to tourists and historians and artists coming, that's one of the criteria under Section 9. And I would think that would be one of the things this commission would want, to have more people come and look at or be part of the historical significance of its community. And right now, quite honest, I live in Newark and I drive up South Orange all the time. It's a blur, in my opinion. So to me, that would be, I think, a positive.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think what you're talking about is point 9 under Section 1C, Section 9,
Yes.
1C, Roman numeral 9.
Oh,
And
no, I
that
was-
is attracting tourists, students, writers, and historians. Those are individuals who would be coming to study historic properties in Montrose. And for example, that would be the current 14 Kingman House. So a new house would not be one that they would be studying.
And I
They
understand
would be
that, but it's
studying
an
the history.
attraction, it's a visual
Right.
attraction. It just kind of draws your eye to something that's not currently there.
Well, I think in discussing this as a board, I think what concerns me is that the town's intent in terms of 140 with lots is that they wanted to keep the grand lot sizes that we do have in the village, and that by taking off part of a side yard and adding a house increases the density. And I think that would be detracting to the aesthetic of the historic district, and something that I would be of concern to the village and residents in that area. So I think that that concerns me greatly. Also, I don't think that there has been sufficient evidence provided to us that any restrictive covenants have been looked after in this property, and that many of these properties in Montrose Park have covenants that state there should be a single-family house on the lot, and there actually are setbacks and et cetera, and rules that went with the land in regard to even things like having a pigsty or things like that. Obviously, that's not something that we have in modern days.
Would that be on the,
but
would that be on the deed?
That would be in the original title.
On the original title?
Yeah,
So
so
we
it'd be
could,
doing a chain of title.
so we
then.
could request that as information. I mean, the other thing that I look at is, on the other side of the coin is, yes, the lot's smaller than 140 feet in the width, but also if we're looking at the minimum lot size here, which is 7,500 square feet, even the small of two lots is almost double that size in area.
And that's for that particular R zone, not for
Right.
Montrose?
No, this is for this zone.
Right.
Talking about this zone here. So I think it's something also that has to be taken into
Could you
consideration.
repeat what you just said?
The minimum lot area required in an RA 75 zone is 7,500 square feet. They have two lots here that they're proposed to break down to 13,200 feet and 19,177 square feet. So I think that's something that should also be taken into consideration when we're thinking about. I mean, we're not like we're close in numbers and,
Exactly. The new lots are clearly within are generous with respect to that R zone.
yes.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, these are planning board decisions as well. We're looking at, I mean, as far as variances and stuff,
I'm not
This
looking at,
would
I'm
be
not
decided
looking
in
at, I'm
planning.
not looking at a variance, I'm looking at,
Okay.
in terms of talking
Square-
about,
but again,
I'm
that-
just looking at area here.
okay,
Right.
and that, again, comes under planning again?
No, just a visual,
Visual, okay.
just pure
see.
visual.
I think that, if I can characterize it, the one position is that the lot sizes as they are should remain because they have historical significance in their current size. Another point of view is that although that might be true, they're still significantly larger than what's permitted, than what's required in the zone. And I think that's the
Okay.
balance.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's the point.
Although I think within Montrose, there are a lot more uses of the property than you will find in other of this particular R zone. A lot of Montrose properties have fairly big winding drives. They have pools. They have large components that would take up a lot of square footage. I guess my question is, with this new lot size, you're limited more than you would be with a lot of other Montrose properties in terms of what you could actually do with the property.
Yeah, I think you're also changing the streetscape, because the streetscape on Kingman now is going to be looking at the side of a house, too. So
And that could be addressed with vegetation, appropriate landscaping. And lot 1.01, I believe is a significant size to accommodate other uses, such as, for example, the pool or some other accessory usage.
I'd like to say that I think in terms of the purview of this commission, before we can make a decision, we probably need to see the evidence of are there any restrictions or covenants on the property before we can rule.
Are we the determining body in terms of that? I mean, if there is a covenant that, say, denies this, if it gets through here, have we sort of ruled the covenant invalid?
I think you're asking a question that was the subject of the Mary Lawn litigation, which I certainly don't want to get into, but if I understand correctly, that was one of the issues in that case, was whether or not the development was permitted by virtue of the covenants. As you know, we have a subcommittee now that is developing a checklist of items so that future applicants may be aware of a little more clearly of what we need to submit. But it's certainly within your discretion to decide that if you need that information in order to make a decision, that you could do that and ask them to come back with that information.
Well, I definitely think it's something that we should find out about.
I agree. I think that if it's, if there is a covenant that only allows one house on the property, then that would have a big influence on our decision.
Yeah, there's also a concern about exclusionary zoning as well. So, I mean, at some point, you know, if it's, you're excluding classes of people or,
Well, why
you know,
are you excluding-
densities of people because
If you
of
have
some
if you have a
somewhat
property
arbitrary
that has a
decision.
covenant on it already,
That doesn't mean it's necessarily right. There's a lot of restrictions that are no longer legal in this state or this country.
No, but counsel,
So-
there was, in another matter that's now been stayed, there was a significant issue about the covenants that were in place a long time ago, and I don't think they fall into the category that you're talking about. They're really historic preservation type of covenants. And I recognize, just speaking for myself, realize that there may be some expense involved in doing that search, but I think that the board's within its discretion to ask for whether or not there's a covenant on this property that would effectively prohibit what it is you're proposing to do.
No, that's reasonable, and I'd appreciate Commissioner Don, at least the copy, not the copyright, the title to what you were referencing, or at least that page, because I would think that in the application, I don't know if they included the deed restrictions in the application to the, as part of the
No,
submission?
the deed restrictions are not listed in
Okay.
this report. That is
Okay.
something that is in the individual deeds or chain
I know,
of
I understand,
title.
but sometimes in part of the application, to support the application for the historic designation, I would think that you would have provided, you know, that kind of information, not you, but, you know.
Well, when this report was written, there is a lot of background information about Montrose Park, and this is discussion in here in general terms
Okay.
about restrictive covenants that were
Okay.
put
I don't know
into
if I could
place.
get it from Ms. Cameron, you know, the information, and then I'll be able to provide what you're requesting, the, you know, the deeds, title
I
deeds.
think we can find a way to get you.
I wanna just kinda figure out a
get you
way.
started on that.
Yeah, because I don't want to prolong the process,
Right.
and if we could expedite it, we could exchange information. I don't know if it's necessary to come back for a hearing. If just getting the deed restrictions or a title search, if that's sufficient, I'm just looking procedurally. I mean, I can certainly get deeds, that's pretty quick, easy to do, but,
No, I think what I'm hearing, and I wasn't involved in this other matter, but I think what I'm hearing is that they wanted not just the current deed, obviously.
no, not the current,
but-
like
but-
a chain of title,
Right,
right. mhm.
right.
Chairman Hill, I have one question, if I may. Is the intention for the new lot, the one that is going to front to South Orange Avenue, also to have access to Kingman Avenue?
No,
Not at all.
no.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, I don't really think this has anything to do with our purview, but do you have to get permission from the county to do that?
Because of South Orange Avenue, yeah.
I
We have
just-
to,
I just
we have to
wanted to
submit.
know.
Well, well, we submit the application, the same application we submit to, you know, at some point will also be given to them. When the, because we have to come back for the dwelling.
Okay,
All
just
right.
curious.
So at this moment, from what I'm hearing and what council is advising here, that we ask for a motion, that you come back with the, what is it called, the title of succession. Is that,
I think that's a key issue
is that
for
what
us
I'm
here.
hearing? We need a, I see nods, nods.
So would
No,
we-
no, I agree, I just.
Okay.
think-
So would we have to create how do
We have to pass, I'm going to ask for a
A
motion
motion
for covenants or
to
restrictions based
request
on.
for
What
information?
I think the motion would be is to ask that a move to carry the matter with council consenting to the waiver of any automatic deadlines, and in order for the applicant to provide the title information related to whether there were any restrictive covenants or other limitations.
So, and that would mean the complete chain of title, so a copy of each deed.
I guess it means whatever it is in order to prove that. I don't know whether a complete chain would be necessary or not. I really don't know.
Ms. Richardson asked, I don't think we're addressing this, whether or not it would be needed for her to be here at the next meeting, or whether the chain of, the title search would be sufficient.
She's going to be here anyway. Don't worry about it.
That lawyer got me to get here tonight. All right. But, I'll be happy to try to submit it to a regular meeting. If I know what your schedule is, we could try to submit it well in advance of your next meeting, so you have opportunity to review it, and then we can
That would be
prepare.
Yeah.
If
Earlier the better.
necessary to come in.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I'll contact Ms. Cameron about the title and how I could get that.
Well, I think what I would suggest is that you adjourn it to the December 18 meeting. If you find that you need more time than that, then
Let me just get my calendar. That's a date I'm doing something on, I think. I think I have something. Let me just-
Second, next one, December 18th.
oh, is that right?
That's
That was the
right.
planning board meeting. It's
Oh,
December
okay.
18th.
That is right.
Well, I don't,
That's what I have on my, that's what I have on my calendar.
I'm pretty sure that's.
And that's not, we
well,
haven't
the
set
only
out
issue there is
notices.
that I believe the ordinance says that they're not supposed to act until we act.
Right, but we had anticipated getting some resolution this evening, and I think when we spoke with, I think Scott, I can't recall the other attorney.
Pat Dwyer.
Thank you. So, and I don't know the next, I don't think they have the calendar yet for the next board meeting until 2014.
Well, then, so you would
So
come here on
you're meeting on the
December 8th.
same night? Do you meet on?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think you're meeting on the same
A lot of it
night.
has to do with scheduling.
Oh, you're meeting on the same night?
We are.
Oh.
We're the 16th?
We're the
Oh.
16th.
Okay.
Kathy, you have the calendar there of meetings?
We have us on the 18th.
proposed. I didn't know if a change had been made from the proposed calendar to the published, but
It's December 16th?
it looks like, yeah, I have to double check now. But Stephen, you have the calendar for the planning board?
I have what I transferred
Okay,
to my phone, so it's 99%.
okay, so then an amendment would need to be made to the published schedule for the remainder of 2013. On this schedule, it's Wednesday, December 18th, but it looks like the Historic Preservation Commission meeting would be Monday, December 16th.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, then-
Oh, so we're moved, we have to make a motion to move the meeting? to-
Will you send us out
Yeah, 'cause
an
we
email
haven't
confirming
really-
that?
No.
You have to notice it in the newspaper.
Don't
Can we
notice.
confirm that tonight, that
Yes.
meeting?
Sounds good.
Well, I have to just confirm it when I get in the office tomorrow.
So you'll send us an email out then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Okay.
then
But
we carried this matter to December 16th.
Logistically, though, if the planning board is on the 18th, this is an advisory, is this a significant amount of time to get your opinion or your written report to the planning board within 2 days?
That's a fair
And
question.
then I have to, of course, publish, notice of the hearing.
That's a fair
Fair
question.
question.
So,
I think you're
I'm not-
probably better off bumping.
I'm not
planning board.
necessarily opposed to pushing the planning board meeting
Right.
back, but I just,
No,
I
I
don't
think
think
that's right.
logistically that's
When
not
we
gonna
haven't
work.
set up a mechanism yet here, like you would with the planning board, where I prepare a resolution and they adopt it at the next meeting. We haven't had that, all that stuff come up yet. But I think you're right. You're probably better off just noticing for January for the planning board, or telling me you want to carry it to the planning board.
but for the purposes of this commission, it's December 16th.
Yes.
As far as we know.
That's true.
I want to say it is frustrating to us too, because the dates keep changing, and we used to always regularly be on the same night each month, the same week of each month, and so it's been a little difficult for us too to keep it straight.
Okay,
Yeah, because I have it on my calendar as the
I know.
18th.
Me too.
But I didn't think you would both commissions would be meeting on the same night, that's.
I
you know,
think
Understand.
I think with the town hall being closed and everybody being displaced, it's a little
So
dicey.
Okay, well, I appreciate, go ahead, I'm
I'm
sorry.
going to, a motion to carry this matter on.
I make a motion to carry this matter to December 16th, Monday. Do I need any, so that we can receive additional information as requested in the meeting?
And council agrees to waive automatic deadlines.
And council agrees to waive automatic deadlines.
Would you have put in the
set
motion
forth
what the
in
information is that we're
the
requesting? Bill?
Well, she said is the information that was requested in the meeting. That's good.
Requested.
Okay.
She
Okay.
knows.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll have a favorable outcome.
Thank you for your time
Thank
tonight.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Okay. Moving on, the agenda here, discussion, historic preservation plan element of the village master plan. That also kind of goes into the subcommittee updates as well. We can
I
kind
really
of-
can't hear what you're saying.
I'm sorry, so moving on with the agenda, there's the discussion of historic preservation plan element of the village master plan.
Yes.
So that's, and then we have the subcommittee updates, and the first subcommittee there is the village master plan of historic preservation plan element. I know that we have not met because we've been busy with getting on with other subcommittees, but as far as the village plan, we need to schedule a meeting. I know that Commissioner Mon has gotten some, what's the details for, that we want to follow. We've agreed that we'd like the Maplewood.
Right, we
portion.
had agreed to the Maplewood master plan to follow as a model, but I have uncovered a later version that I think we should take a look at altogether and decide if that's still the way we want, if we want to go with the way they have updated theirs or not. It's just interesting to note the differences in the emphasis on historic preservation and how they're handled in both plans. So I thought we should take a look at that together. And I also think it would be a great idea if we could set a timetable to have this, at our subcommittee meeting, set a timetable to work around to get, just to have a date we're working towards, and maybe some intermediary steps to get accomplished.
I have no problem with that since I'm on that committee as well. To set some time up to review what you found.
Yeah.
Can we set a date right now for the subcommittee as far as that? Why not? I'm much available after December 1st. I'm wide open. So it's I become very slow in the month of December. So I'm open for a lot of dates. I know Commissioner Barnett, you're on it as well. And
I am.
Mark,
and
Commissioner Mark.
Commissioner Don. Do you guys have your calendars? Do you know your dates? And we can set that meeting to go forward and continue with that portion.
Right. I generally have commitments on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but they can be moved with enough notice.
What are you saying, the 4th?
No, I'm saying it's for a quorum.
For
Yeah, you have to have 3 or less.
The last time we met, I think we noticed the meeting, and we
Oh.
had some audience members.
If you want to make it a formal meeting, sure.
That's what we did.
Well, I don't know if that will make it go quicker or make it go slower.
Well,
So,
we'd
I
have to
think it's
reduce
also,
our size.
I think it's also an issue of where you're going to meet once you're a quorum. It's got to be in a public
We
space.
did, we met at Village
That's really
Hall.
what the bigger issue is. You don't have like town hall just to, and I don't think Starbucks counts as a public forum.
No, but I think last time, well, we had the availability of one of the meeting rooms at Village Hall, and I think there's meeting rooms at the PNC building, correct? Are they available in the evenings or late afternoons? Mhm.
Yes.
So how do we have to proceed?
Pick a date, and then you have to tell Kathy to check its availability, and if it's available, then she'll notice one.
Okay. So dates for planning for the master plan subcommittee. December, after Thanksgiving holiday, would probably be best. Mondays work great for me.
Monday evening is pretty good for me, depending on the Monday.
Down there.
I didn't.
Mondays, we're looking at Mondays in December.
Mondays are good for me.
Bob?
the 9th is,
The
I can do
9th
the
is
second.
perfect for me.
9th is good for me.
So we
Ninth?
look at the 9th?
Ninth.
9th? Kathy, can you see if there's a room at the PNC building there that we could use and post for a subcommittee meeting?
And what time?
7:30? 7:30.
And the location will be?
At the temporary city hall there?
There's conference rooms.
There's conference rooms.
Yes, in 76 South Orange Avenue.
If there's a problem meeting there, can't we also meet at the Baird Center or possibly at the public library?
The library, I'm sure, yes. But let me look, and we have 2 conference rooms, and only standing committees use the conference room. The statutory committees use SOPAC.
Oh, we're being flashed.
Uh-oh.
I think you were not heard.
The statutory.
Move your mic, please.
Microphone.
The standing committees meet in the conference rooms, and the statutory committees meet in SOPAC. So with 2 conference rooms available, optimistic that Monday, December 9th at 7:30 will
Right,
be
and-
available.
And you did say that possibly the library or Baird
Correct.
would be possible.
All right, then, subcommittee meeting, December 9th, to discuss the village master plan. You will get back to us with a room on that? Thank you.
I will.
All right, so to continue down with subcommittee updates, next on the list is the pump house. Who is on that wonderful subcommittee? There you go. Commissioner Marlowe. Any updates?
No, it wasn't me.
No, was it? Nope, sorry, wrong one.
Carter.
Carter. No, I'm looking, I was like, yeah, don't worry, my apologies, Carter. Any updates on the pump house?
I just corresponded a bit back and forth with Mr. Barrett, who had reached out to the town about his ideas and recommendations for what could be done with the pump house area. And I've been doing a little bit of research of what other towns have done with sites like that. And I haven't come up with anything conclusive yet, but I know we had a little bit of a conversation about possibilities several meetings ago, how the different degrees of preservation that we could look at based on very little funding, basically, for the project.
And just Amy had Commissioner Don had given us some names, and I reached out to Trustee Clark, and he is, the idea basically, just to reiterate, is that we were approved, I believe, for the sign itself. So the idea is that is there any possibility of finding some sort of found item, such as maybe something made of metal, that we could substitute as the base? And so Trustee Clark had recommended an individual that sort of knows the art community, that we might be able to do some sort of a limited, I don't know, an RFP or an RFI or some sort of a contest or something to sort of, I don't know, enable us to use a component of the pump house as the base. And we could potentially save the money that it would have cost to actually buy the base from the company that we currently use.
Okay.
Is the pump house still standing?
Yes,
Do we know when it's going to come down?
that's a question out there, and Trustee Clark did not know that, but he
Okay.
was he was going to get back to me on when.
Trustee Schnall, any idea?
No, Trustee Clark would be the right person to go to on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So would Commissioner Barnett, would particular pieces of equipment from inside the pump house be shown to these artists? Is that what you have?
I mean, I
planned?
think the idea would be that, and this is just an idea, that we consider what we do have in terms of inventory, and because I know that a good share of that has been salvaged or has been sort of committed. So basically, the question number one is what's left, and is any of that usable, and do any of sort of our local artisans have any ideas with how they could use it?
Thanks, okay.
So we need to find out from the clerk when demolition is going to take place.
There's a couple of things. When is
Okay.
demolition?
When is demolition?
What is salvageable, if anything? And then, my next steps are to figure out if it would be possible to do this other form of a base versus the standard base that we use, along along Flood Hill and those other areas where there are signs.
Okay.
And I guess one more component of the whole process would be the redesign of the bridge and all the development along the river, River Greenway, and how it's all going to be integrated.
And I'm not really familiar with what the current plan is, so that's probably something we should figure out and then share with the commission.
So if I'm following you, it's kind of like what they've done a part of the river down by the Baird, just have a sign here that here stood the pump house and here's
So that
this,
at the end of the day, this piece sort of contributes to what the overall plan is for that area.
Okay. All right, so we need to get development plan, see what's going to be salvaged, and the date of demo.
Yes.
You going to go about doing that?
Yes, I will do that.
Perfect, that's what I was looking at. Is there any other questions for the Pump House Subcommittee, or any other things to report? Nope. All right, then we'll move down, Inventory of Homes Subcommittee.
I'm not sure how this got listed as a separate committee,
think
because
it's
this is
more
really a part of the
master plan is what I was-
And so that is part of that whole committee getting restarted in the process of that, and I know I was going to be helping with that inventory.
Okay. So I drew my arrow, and we'll just include that inventory of homes under the master plan element, and we'll put that with the subcommittee. On the 9th, we'll talk about that. HPC website is the next subcommittee.
So just a quick update on that. With the overall South Orange Village website being sort of redesigned and relaunched, the question is, we will have a page, and what will we do with it? So I spoke with President Torpy about what we could do, and it's pretty open basically. We do have a page. I had asked about links out from the page, and he said that by all means. So I think it would behoove us to link to things like National Register, a whole bunch of other different organizations that would sort of reinforce the commission, and from a web perspective, give us SEO juice, even though I don't know what we'd use it for, but links do help a website. So
It would help out applicants as well to find information. So, okay, I see, all right.
So I think in terms of next steps on that, it is to continue to work as a committee, as a subcommittee, to basically find out or propose what we want our page to look like and what we want it to link to, and to start, I think, at part of an audit of what we have already, and how to leverage that and move that over to the new site.
Okay.
And find out what specifically criteria that they will give us, the village
That's-
themselves.
yeah.
If they're going to say, this is what you have to work with, then we have to work around that.
It's true. I mean, I think that there's likely some sort of a consistency and a model of how the entire site looks, and that's what we will have to work with.
Yeah, if they could share a page template with us, that
We'll
would be
ask
really
that.
helpful.
I'm sure that that's a possibility.
Okay.
Right, and this would be a great place to have all of our forms available to applicants
Right.
and things like that.
And I think that's a very good point. I mean, I think there's an opportunity sort of from a marketing perspective, an education perspective, but also a process perspective in terms of, submissions. And given that submissions are public, sort of open to the public, maybe that's a link to them, quite honestly.
So if we can also put if we can put the when we ask for these applications, we're asking for a hard copy and an electronic copy.
That's correct.
So if we posted the electronic copies on site as we get them, it just makes us more transparent and open. And,
Good idea.
ongoing ones, upcoming.
Nope. Any other questions about the website or comments? If not, we'll move on. Procedures and checklist. I know we just met last week about this. I have council discuss where we're at.
Yeah, we had a meeting, we went through the ordinance and tried to come up with a comprehensive list of all of the items that an applicant should submit based upon what your criteria are for approval that we were just speaking about a little while ago. I'd hoped to have a draft done of that, but I don't yet. But I think that what my thought would be that sometime within a couple of weeks that I will send around by email a draft checklist that people can comment on, with the goal hopefully of at our December meeting of having a checklist that we can adopt. One of the things that we have to figure out, we were talking about in the meeting, was there are different checklists for different kinds of applications, right? So that's one of the things that we're sorting out, but I hope to have that to you in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I ask you one before, while we're on this?
Sure.
Before we go on, we had talked about doing addendums to the main application, one for subdivision, and I don't know if we're going to do one for major facades or not, but are we going to move forward? Because we had talked about setting up a subcommittee for that. I thought we had that going, but.
I think of what you call the addendum as the checklist. I think. I mean, I think.
Well,
they're-
we have a demolition addendum.
Right.
We have a certificate of appropriateness, and we have a demolition addendum.
Well,
And then we had talked about having a subdivision addendum.
Right, what I'm thinking of is that what you're calling the demolition addendum is going to become the demolition checklist with some modifications based on
Okay,
our meeting.
that's fine.
And then a subdivision addendum and a relocation addendum, I think that's the other one, I think.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
There is also if it's a major facade change, is something that we are supposed to
Right.
have in front of us.
Well, right, there's also has to be a schedule for when they're here, not for a certificate of appropriateness, but they're here for our informal advice
Right.
on an application. That's just separate, so.
Right.
Right, and it's my understanding the village could choose anything and say, we want you to give us some advice.
Well, again, another thing that I think we have to sort out that's a little vague in the ordinance is under what circumstances does an application from one of the land use boards come here for a non-binding recommendation? And that's one of the things that we're still trying to figure out, to be honest.
So down the line, we'll be amending the
I-
ordinance.
Right. I think we know this. I think we know that if it's not in the historic district, or one of the historic districts, they're not coming here, right? If somebody has a pending application on Irvington Avenue, that's not coming to this board no matter what.
I think if there are designated landmarks that aren't within a historic district,
That's true.
then yes.
That's what I meant, yeah. That's true. Right.
But I do think that the village trustees might say, well, we still want you to give us a comment when it's not one of those. I think that's their right,
That's fine.
right?
But that wouldn't even come to us. They wouldn't even fill out the application, would they?
No, they would just send us probably a request, we'd like you to review this.
Not the trustees, the board, the planning board or the zoning board.
Right,
They would
Oh,
just send
sorry.
us their
That's what I meant.
application to review.
yeah.
But the way I think the way I understand the ordinance now is that it has to be in the designated landmark, it has to be in the designated historic district. What I think is still a little unclear is, does every application for everything within those areas come here for informal advice or not? If somebody is putting a deck on the back of their house in Montrose and isn't planning on demolishing anything and isn't planning on disturbing more than 50% of the property, does that application come here for informal advice? Because otherwise it would come here for appropriateness. That's the part of it that I think we're still trying to sort out.
Okay.
Any other questions about procedures or checklists? Okay, at this time then.
Before, I think I was too late to have this item added to the agenda. Can we amend to add that I wanted to
Yes,
speak?
I had put it under discussion, changes to the village charter, and that Commissioner Down would be providing an update. I don't know that I had enough printed copies of the revised agenda, because I
Okay.
put copies outside for the public.
Oh,
And so
okay.
they might have gotten mixed in with the last of the original
Okay, there's
agenda.
mine.
But I did add it, and I did
Okay.
email it. I'm pretty sure I did email it at the
Okay.
end of the day.
Okay, so in follow-up, at our last meeting, we had voted in favor of making a statement to the village trustees about the charter review, and that was scheduled for October 28th at that regularly scheduled the Board of Trustees meeting. And Commissioner Marlowe and I both attended and planned to speak at that trustees meeting, but as it turned out, the ordinance that had been uploaded for that meeting was a previous revision, and it did not include the changes that were to be voted upon that evening. So it was tabled into, or whatever the appropriate term is for tabled. It was held until the next meeting, which was held on November 13th, on 2013, and I was able to attend, and unfortunately, my statement did not have enough impact to sway the board, and they moved forward with changing the titles of village president to mayor and the board of trustees to council, what's the correct term?
Councilperson, but just.
Councilperson. But what's going to happen is this now gets referred to the state. A charter has to get reviewed by the state of New Jersey, and it may take several years before it goes through all these procedural things because it has to be sponsored by a senator and a representative before it can get an assemblyman, before it can be approved. So there were other additional changes that I didn't speak to as a member of this board, but I did say personally something about the village of South Orange versus the South Orange Village, and that those terms were interchangeable in my mind. So at any rate, it was 5 yeses and 1 no, with Trustee Levison voting no.
Thank you for the update.
Then I guess that was just the first reading?
Yeah, the
There
second
will be a
reading will have the
second reading.
public hearing.
That was second reading, and it goes up, again, it goes to the state. So,
But the second reading is when the public hearing takes place on the
no,
ordinance.
that was,
No,
That was
it's
the first
second
hearing.
reading. The second reading is when the public
it
hearing.
was second reading.
No, it was the first reading last week.
That was the first reading,
What was the
because
first?
the
Okay.
first, the one that was in October was the wrong ordinance. So the second reading is when the hearing, the public hearing is on it.
Okay.
So I think that meeting is, when's your next meeting, December?
I think it's like the beginning of December, December 3rd.
That's actually the night of that, December 9th is the,
December 9th, oh, good.
Oh, uh-oh. I may not be able to come to the master plan meeting.
There you go. Thank you for the update regarding that. Are there any other, I asked for a motion to adjourn here, excuse me, public comments. Before we go to public comments, are there any other topics, subcommittee topics? Nothing? We're good. At this time, I'd like to open it up to public comments. Is there anyone of the public who would like to speak at this time?
You sure, Elise? We're kind of bored here.
All right, there's no public comments. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Yep.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Commissioner